Known as a daily occurrence at school. We brush situations of abuse at school aside, labeling them as kids will be kids. But what if 78% of that bullying could simply stop? Our names are Mariana Hernandez, Kayla Aguirre,
George Titus,
and we have been doing extensive research on the topic of gender identity. People deal with gender expression in different ways, but all the different reactions come from the fact that we are not taught the specific differences between gender and sex. This following video presents the differences between gender and sex. Gender identity and the way we address it affects students negatively from a very early age. We can all fight for gender inclusivity and help the many kids who are discriminated because of something they can't control.
For our analysis, we concluded that the problem is very complex and the discrimination that follows many individuals who identify as transgender and non-conforming is daily and a life-changing experience. After the extensive research, we also concluded that the main source of this problem was the fact that gender identity is not taught at schools. However, when gender identity is introduced to students, it is often on the basis of stereotypes and generalized ideas of how a girl and boy should act.
According to Child Development Encyclopedia, a class with more gendered terms such as boys and girls, and who were told to line up by girls and by boys, were more likely to stereotype their peers, and this can affect their behavior for a lifetime. According to Kimberly Keelty, a gender rights activist and writer for the Huffington Post, they experience a daily discomfort of having to correct people. Even though this is not an extreme case, it still shows how every person who is gender non-conforming is affected just because of the way they are, that we are taught to address someone. Based on these two articles, we can deduce that the problem is how we are exposed to gender. The things that we are told in school at a young age stick with us until adulthood. We then are taught to believe that such teachings are acceptable and end up affecting other people. Whether we bully someone, misgender someone at the store, or offend someone we care about, all these are examples of the negative effects that this problem creates. In order to solve this problem, we created 3 criteria. Those criteria were that our solutions had to be inclusive, informative, and easy to understand. This is a video that explains these 3 criteria. We also created a video to explain our different potential solutions. Inclusivity is a very important criteria that we need because of the conflict that arises between gender nonconformity and religion. We have to keep in mind the majority of the United States who is of Christian faith. Christianity bases their rejection of people who identify as transgender and nonconforming on the Bible. Many other religions also make campaigns which argue against the rights and protections of gender nonconforming individuals. Another very important criteria is that it is informative. There can't be any objective information because of the fact that many people have conflicts with the idea of gender. Our potential solutions had to be kept easy to understand for the many who grew up believing that gender nonconformity is wrong.
We have decided that extensive lesson plans on gender fluidity, biological sex, and the science of sexual orientation throughout the grades with increasing complexity as a child gets older was the best idea.
This was because, according to the GLCEN Model District Policy on Transgender and Gender Nonconforming Students, a good policy for such students would include gender-inclusive language and gender-inclusive dress code, as well as the many other things that we base our decision on, such as lesson plans on gender fluidity and biological sex. Also, according to Thomas Aberle, principal of State Public Elementary School, making his school's policies more gender-inclusive decreased the amount of verbal harassment and physical harassment that occurred at his elementary school. According to both of these sources, students are more than capable of understanding ideas such as gender. If ideas that are more complex, such as biological sex and sexual orientation, are introduced later on in their educational path, then they will slowly but surely grow up to be more accepting.